I never thought an ordinary field trip could turn into something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. As a geography student, we always sought unexplored places, mapping territories most people didn't even know existed. That summer, my friends, Jonah, Evan, Luis, and I, decided to investigate a meadow deep in the forests of Oregon. According to old topographic maps, it was an untouched area, barely marked, almost forgotten. The trip there was long and winding, through dense forests and narrow dirt roads. Excitement was in the air. We joked about discovering strange flora, perhaps even new species. We played with the idea of finding ancient relics, traces of forgotten settlements, or places hidden from modern maps. The forest around us grew denser as we progressed, and the radio signal started fading, leaving only static. Even the GPS flickered, as if it couldn't determine our location. When we finally reached the specified coordinates, there was no meadow, not a single clearing, only trees. Even the latest maps indicated that there should be a meadow at this location. This was very strange, because there was no known case in history where a forest could grow so quickly. Some kind of anomaly. And these were no ordinary trees. They were perfect, all the same height, width, and distance from each other. Each one stood straight, like part of a carefully calibrated grid. I was particularly unnerved by the symbols carved into each trunk. We didn't recognize them. No letters, no numbers, no language we knew. They radiated a strange energy, as if they were alive, but not in a biological sense. We froze, thinking that perhaps we had read the coordinates incorrectly. But everything was correct. We had checked it several times. Curiosity got the better of caution. We entered the forest, and from that moment on, the world became strange. The air seemed thick, almost viscous, and every sound was muffled, as if underwater. Shadows stretched in unnatural directions, bending around trees, moving even without wind. A quiet whisper echoed between the trunks, although no one was speaking. It was not a language, but rather a chorus of sighs and whispers, quiet and sad, directed at us. At one point, John pointed to a tree trunk, claiming that it had moved on its own. Evan swore that he saw one of the symbols glowing faintly as he walked past it. I felt like we were being watched from all sides, even though there were no animals or birds to be seen or heard. Which was also strange. Every forest was filled with the sounds of birds, but here there was silence. Even the moss on the ground seemed to stir beneath our feet, as if the earth itself were breathing. Hours or minutes flew by unnoticed, and we came out to the edge of the forest. None of us could explain how we found our way out, but we did, gasping and trembling. We were in some kind of trance. We all felt the same sense of unease. The forest was watching us, as if it had allowed us to leave. But only for a while, something remained behind. We decided not to tell anyone about what had happened. Back at the dorm, Jonah began developing the photos he had taken for the report. He sent them to me. Most were ordinary, trees, paths, symbols, but one made me pale. It was a group shot, us together, smiling. Behind us stretched shadows. Shadows in the shape of trees, our trees. And they weren't just shadows. They were strangely dimensional, almost alive, perfectly mirroring our movements, but twisted and unnatural, as if the forest had reached through the lens, leaving its imprint. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me insisted it was a trick of light or double exposure, but the forms were impossible, aligning perfectly with our limbs, yet deformed. I saw subtle movement within the shadows, almost imperceptible. Tiny oscillations, as if the trees themselves breathed. Throughout the week, each of us felt an unusual urge to return to that forest. We discussed it during our meetings. None of us were indifferent. Everyone saw that photo and described the same obsessive feeling inside. A longing for the inexplicable. Something was calling us back. Despite our concerns, we decided to return. This time we expected to see the same strange forest. But when we arrived, it was gone. In its place lay the very clearing marked on all the maps, which we had originally intended to explore. We were overcome with confusion. We argued immediately, voices rising over the calm of the open field. "That can't be," Evan shouted, pacing back and forth. This was all forest. Perfectly aligned trees, carved symbols. How do you just disappear? Louis shook his head. Maybe it was a hallucination, a mirage. Something tricked our minds. I ran my fingers through my hair. But we all saw it, all of us. How do you explain the photos, the shadows? Jonah, usually calm, seemed pale and unsettled. Maybe it only appears to those who search for it. Maybe it exists outside our time or space. We spread out across the meadow, scanning every tree line in the ground. We even looked for traces of logging, hoping to find evidence that a forest had been there before. But there was nothing. No trees, no stumps, no marks. No sign that the forest had ever existed. The uncertainty gnawed at us. We decided to report the place to our university professors, hoping for guidance. But they dismissed it, attributing our experience to imagination and the exaggeration typical of adventurous students. A few weeks later, one night, I received a message from Jonah. Apparently, he had returned there alone. His messages were brief, almost panicked. I found it. Not where we were, north of the meadow, a few kilometers away. The next message contained the coordinates of the place he had found. I decided to reply in the morning. I didn't attach much importance to these messages. I decided it could wait until morning. But the next morning, I found another message from Jonah, sent at 3:47 a.m. It was frightening, fragmented, and nonsensical. "They know I'm coming. Don't follow me. I'm not alone." That was it. All morning I tried to send him messages, but they didn't go through. I tried calling him every 5 minutes. John's phone was unavailable. His number wasn't working. Panic gripped me, thick and suffocating. I called Evan and Louis. We agreed. We had to search. Using the coordinates Jonah had sent in his message, we drove to the location. North of the meadow we wanted to explore. The air here was different, heavier, almost alert. The faint rustling of leaves sounded like a whisper of warning. A cold wind, even though the day was warm, blew across our faces, carrying the smells of wet bark and decay. And there it was, a small tree, standing alone in a meadow. It was identical to the ones we had seen in the forest the first time. The same perfect shape, the same distance between the roots, the same carved symbols. But it was smaller, younger. A chill ran down my spine. Everything inside me tightened. Somewhere deep down, I understood what it meant. We searched the surrounding forest, calling out Jonah's name, combing every inch. There was no trace of him. No backpack, no phone, not the slightest hint of his presence. We contacted the local police and gave them the coordinates. A full-scale search began. All our friends joined in the search for Jonah. Days passed. Weeks passed. Nothing. No traces, no belongings, no hint of his presence. The last time I saw that tree, the sun was setting low, casting long shadows across the meadow. The tree had grown considerably and looked just like the trees we'd seen the first time. No one thought anything of it. And as I looked at the trunk and the symbols on it, I felt a cold certainty. The forest had taken him. And what we saw now, the perfect tree, was him, transformed, rooted in this strange grove, a living monument to the force that controlled this place. I've never returned to Oregon since. I tried to avoid maps, coordinates, and even the faintest mention of that meadow. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I swear I see shadows moving just at the corner of my vision, mirroring my gestures. And in those moments, I remember Jonah. And I know the forest is still out there, waiting, watching, ready to claim the next curious soul. If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.